tell you, I've been thinking about my Unity family all morning long. I picked up a roast this weekend, and I got up this morning and I put it in my crock pot bright and early, and I've been smelling that roast cook, and it makes me think of all those potluck Sunday dinners when I would have a roast cooking to bring, and I was just wishing, just thinking how nice it would be and how nice it's going to be when we can all get together once again for a Unity potluck Sunday. Won't that be great? And I want to say, Jeannie, thank you for being at the church on the World Day of Prayer. Betty, I saw your comment in the comment section. It actually started at 1 o'clock. It went from 1 to 6. So Betty said she came, but she got there a little early, I think, before you were ready. So, but thank you, Jeannie. I think it's so great that Unity of Little Rock was actually able to have a presence and show up on the World Day of Prayer. That's fantastic. And I'm really happy to be here and have this opportunity to speak for you guys. When I get the chance to speak, when Jeannie asked me to speak, I always take it very seriously. I look at it as a big responsibility. I want to share something with you that's going to help you on your spiritual journey and your unfoldment. I have gotten so much support and strength and guidance and wisdom through Unity teachings, in the services I've attended over the years. And I just want to make sure I can hopefully give a little bit of that back to you. And today I'm talking about placing limits on the limitless. And this is a process that started with me actually a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago now. And I'm going to tell you, my slide's not advancing. Let's see if I need to go. Why is my slide not advancing? So, okay. Let's see if this is going to work. There we go. I got it. So, about 3 weeks ago, I got triggered big time. I mean, a huge trigger. And it was from a meme that was showed up on Facebook. And this was one of my relatives, and a cousin of mine that lives way off, and it's one of those things. And she had shared it, and the first thing I saw, and it wasn't this meme, but I couldn't find the exact one, but it was one similar. And the first thing I saw was God hates, and oh my goodness, that got all over me. And so I'm usually pretty good these days about not just firing something back really quick, but man, that got all over me. And I tapped a reply, and I thought, I am so grateful that my understanding of my higher power today is beyond a God that can hate, boom, or something like that, self-righteous, pompous, how, and I sent it, and immediately I thought, oh man, why did I do that? So I was thinking, and then within a week, another relative of mine, a different relative, threw up another meme with the same kind of thing on it. And, and this is a meme, it's from Proverbs, and you may have seen it. They use it a lot. They use this particularly in an anti-abortion, pose, that God hates the shedding of innocent blood. And that's why if you do abortion, you're going to go to hell and burn forever. And God hates you because, and it just got all over me because, God is love, right? Isn't that the truth? God is love. So, how can God be love and God be hate? And so processing through all of that. And then, fast forward to Daybree's lesson last weekend, the 3 faces of God. And that's where I got me thinking about God in a box and thinking about love and hate. Well, wait a minute. If I think that God is beyond hate, am I not putting God in a box? If I think God is love, am I not putting God in a box? So the question is, am I still placing limits on the limitless? Am I still placing God in a box? And so, I got to thinking back. I'm going to take you on a brief journey with me over the years, to my very first box. I want y'all to see my very first box. It was so tiny. It was so small. It was so easy to navigate. You didn't have to have a lot of questions, and you certainly didn't have to worry about answers. You just did what you were told. God was a very demanding God. He was very exacting about what you could and could not do. And you will be punished if you don't follow the rules. Obedience was demanded with threats of eternal pain and suffering. And at that time, there was really only one book that, was important, and that was this book, and I grew up in that religion, in that denomination. being told that there was only one book you ever needed to read. In fact, only one book that was allowed, and that was to read the Bible. Now, let me say, please understand that what I am sharing with you today is my perception. It's what I took away from my early childhood religious experiences. I know many people that continue that are faithful and fulfilled in that denomination that I was born into and that I was raised in. Good people, caring people, loving people. So I'm in no way want to put anyone down. But when I came out of this religion, this was my thought process. This was my belief system. And as a result of that, I had an incredible amount of shame just for being who I was. You know, when you're told that you're born in sin, and so, you know, from the very get-go, and that, you know, your only chance of salvation is to live up to some, you know, outrageous standard that you can never attain to, it's a very hopeless situation. So as a result of that, you know, things didn't work very well in my life. You know, I tried to fit myself into that box, but, you know, the wheels fell off. What can I say? And so until eventually I hit a bottom that put me into a bigger box. I finally exploded out of that box, and I went to my next box, which is more of a medium-sized box, and it was God as You Understand Him. And this is a copy. This is my very first book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's almost 30 years old now. And, you know, coming from that old fundamentalist background that I'd come from, this was like, oh, expansion. You mean I have permission to choose the God of my understanding? That was mind-blowing to me. In fact, I had to struggle with that. I struggled with that big time as I was coping and going through all this 12-step work, you know, and trying to understand, because, you know, my medium box kept bumping up against my small box, or my small box kept bumping up against my medium box. You know, how can God hear all of your prayers? You're not going to that church. Until I finally had to get to a point, and I am so grateful for this, that I finally just had to completely let go of everything I thought I ever knew about God, about spirituality, and about religion. I just had to let it all go and try to become an open vessel and start learning again. Well, as I did that, as you can well imagine, that created some problems over at that other box, you know, if you will. And so I eventually had to leave that. And so for a while, you know, I was real happy in this medium-sized box. It fulfilled me, but, you know, something began to call me. I knew there was something beyond that. As you can say, it says, God as You Understand Him. Well, the emphasis is on Him in that program, you know. And so even though it was a bigger box, it was a restrictive box in many ways. So I went to the next box, and oh my God, it was the extra large unity box. One presence, one power, God, the good, omnipotent. Oh, it's so big. It's so big. It's so roomy. I've got room to grow. It was wonderful. And here I got exposed to the 5 principles that God is all there is. You know, that human beings are divine at their core. Even in, you know, in my medium-sized box, they didn't teach that human beings are divine at their core, that thoughts have creative power, and then the prayer and meditation. And then I love point number 5. It's not enough to understand spiritual teachings. We must live the truth we know. And so I began trying to do that in that prayer protection, and I learned and I grew, and unity was so open. And that's where, you know, here's my original Course in Miracles book. And oh my God, I jumped into that and I studied that. I mean, I've read and I did all the lessons for over a year. And I've got a whole great story I can tell you about that one day, but today's not the day. But you know, the Course in Miracles was great, but after I'd been studying that for a year and a half or a couple of years, I realized there's something more. There's something more, you know, God has been. And so then I got science in mind. Oh man, and I was into this for several years. I meditated on this every single day, y'all. I got to tell you, when I dive into something, I dive in feet first all the way down. And I studied this for years, and I love Ernest Holmes. I love science of mind. There is so much truth, and it took me to another level. And I kept growing, and I kept growing, and I kept realizing, well, you know, I gotta do more. And then, you know, I found Anthroposophy through this phase of period, you know, and I read Philosophy of Freedom. This is the greatest philosophical book I've ever read about how we can to think, how to properly think. And then Steiner's book, Knowledge of Higher Worlds, how to develop these clairvoyant capacities within ourselves so that we can navigate and understand better the spiritual world. And I began to grow and I began to develop. But you know, even though that original Unity box took me very, very far, through all the studies, through all the work, and through all the trials and tribulations, and there were many along the way. And you can see from the box here, you know, it got tattered, it got torn, it got ripped open, it got emptied out, it got filled back up, it got taped back up. But I realized I still had God in a box. I still had God in a box. And so it meant I had more work to do. So, you know, that's where the next phase began. And I'm going to tell you, part of it for me, this is my journey. It was getting into the really deeper work of the 12 powers. Because in my mind, this book and doing this workshop with Paul Hasselbeck at Unity Church a few years ago, that's when I began to really look at the language, you know, and looking at the language that we use and looking at these powers in a whole new way. These powers as these forces that work through the body. During this same time, the power of affirmative prayer. You know, this was a powerful book, how to pray without talking to God. Also an awesome book. You know, the relaxation, the concentration, the meditation, realization, appreciation. We talk about this all the time here at Unity of Little Rock. And, you know, and started learning that language and words matter. That if I'm trying to break free of an old conception of God, then I need to stop using the words that I have connected with that old conception of God. So I have to break free. And so affirmative prayer became a way of letting go of all of these aspects of God. And then, you know, the nonviolent communication. I cannot say enough about how important nonviolent communication has been on my spiritual journey. The fact that, you know, the observation, the feeling, the need, the request, we call it the offner in nonviolent communication, where you have an observation of what's going on in your world, and that generates feelings and emotions inside. And then you attach those feelings to needs, whether they're met needs or unmet needs. And then you make requests, and it may be a self-request, better self-care, or it may be a request from another. What nonviolent communication really taught me was has given me the ability to manage my emotions with responsibility. Because what nonviolent communication teaches me is that if I've got an emotion, it's just like that trigger when I saw that meme. I couldn't blame my cousin for posting that. I couldn't blame the originator of the meme for posting that. It triggered me, and I was instantly aware of that. It's like, whoa. What's going on inside of me that I had that kind of reaction to that me? Nonviolent communication is letting go of enemy images, letting go of those enemy images that drive us and that drive us to separation, that make me believe that you're different from me, that I'm better than you, or you're smarter than me, or you're dumber than me, whatever it may be. It's these enemy images that we work to let go of. And then finally, here most recently, it's been Astrosophy. I don't have a book for that. All I've got is a bunch of lectures, and I would love to talk more about this later at some point, and I may give a talk about this if anyone's interested. But this is Astrosophy is star wisdom. It's the spiritual scientific understanding of our new and enhanced relationship to the world of the stars. It's trying to find some of that ancient star wisdom. Because, you know, we understand, you know, as unitics, we know that this body, your body, we are individualized expression of the divine. And that, this is a physical manifestation of a spiritual being in this body. Well, we know that the planet is also a material manifestation of a spiritual being in the planet Earth and in the moon and in the sun, in all the planets and all the stars and all the constellations. It's about expanding that idea that nothing in the material world is actually material. We understand that nothing in the material world is actually material. It's all has a spiritual archetype. And so even the constellations and these forces. So it's about developing a deep awareness of the deep connection to the forces of the cosmos and developing that understanding of the laws of karma and destiny that govern our karma and destiny. And so as all of this was churning around in my consciousness and in my mind, it dawned on me. I had an epiphany. Now, whether it's going to be an epiphany for you or not, I don't know. But it was an epiphany for me, and the epiphany was I limit God by my very belief in God. By the very thing that I think God is, however I describe it, I limit God. God is bigger than my belief. And as soon as I think I understand or know God, I have placed a limit on God. And all I've really done is just changed boxes. Just change boxes. And you know what? I realized God is always in a box. God is always in a box. In my mind, in my thinking, because no matter how I can conceptualize it, no matter how I can imagine it, no matter how much depth of feeling and warmth of heart I can bring to it, God is always spirit. Forget the word God. Spirit is always going to be more than that. So the key is to keep expanding the box. Above, down, inside, and out. And as we do this, ask ourselves, in what ways have we limited God? Or in what ways do we limit God? Well, if you're the Old Testament, type, God was the God of the Jews only, the Jewish nation. God wasn't for the Gentiles. God was just for the Jewish, the chosen people. Well, then, God's only for Christians now. You got to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, or God's not on your side. You're going to hell and burning forever. Or, God of true believers. And that's where I came from. We were a small little, I bet there's not 100,000 of them on the whole planet, but, we thought we were the only ones going to heaven, But you have ideas of a heathen God, ideas of a disinterested God, or ideas of an interested God. You have ideas that God hates, God loves, God's outside me, God within me. That's a limitation. Both of those are limitations of God. We can have a limit God with animal attributes. We can limit God with human attributes, which is very most common. God of one power, God of 12 powers, one God, a multiplicity of God, on, and the list could go on. But the fact is, it's all God. It's all God and more. And however, whatever I want to add to that list. So, if I want to add, a Hindu person, nope, that's God. Well, what about a terrorist? Oh, nope, that's God too. What about our president? Nope, that's God too. Well, what about what about his candidate? Nope, that's God too. Well, what about this virus? It's God too. What about the fire? That's part of God. What about the division between? That's part of God. It's all God and more. That's the key for us to get back to God is bigger than my belief. And people, to me, as we expand our concept, expand our idea and our understanding, and just let it go into the world, into the universe, it is truly, it's impossible to hate. It's impossible to judge someone based on their gender, just because, this individual is a beautiful human spirit in a female body versus this beautiful human spirit in a male body. They should be judged by their human spirit, who they are as a spirit, and it may be a female in a Hispanic body, or a male in a black body, or an elderly male in a South American body. Who knows? Whatever. It does not matter. The only thing that matters is who we are inside, and the way we identify with that is by expanding our consciousness and tapping into that. God is bigger than my belief. God is bigger than any one belief. God is bigger than anyone's belief. And I believe that a big source of strife and discord comes from this idea that my God is better than your God. My God's wiser than your God. My God's more correct than your God. And that creates division and strife. You know, I shared this in the talk that I gave in July, and I wanted to share it again today. Sometimes it's the simplest spiritual teachings that have the greatest impact, the little seeds. And I think the forgiveness work that Charles Fillmore mentions here, I believe is so important today for all of us. He says, here is a mental treatment guaranteed to cure every ill that flesh is heir to. Sit for half an hour every night and mentally forgive everyone against whom you have any ill will or antipathy. Now, you know, as I've gone through my process, as I continue to go through my process, the thing that points me most often in the direction of my next layer of work is my triggers. And it's just like a few weeks ago when I saw that meme and I got triggered. It was, you know, I knew there was something there I needed to work on within myself. And it all comes back to forgiveness, forgiving myself and also forgiving them. And we have the opportunity, you know, as we look around the world today, there are so many people that are doing things that are triggering so many of us in so many ways. It's just like the world is one giant trigger factory. You know, we're just being triggered all around. The challenge and the call as spiritual warriors is to rise within ourselves, to let that love, that compassion, that wisdom, that empathy, to let that build up in our own heart and flow out so that we can forgive everyone for all of this bad behavior. And, you know, and I'm not going to deny there's a lot of, you know, there's some hurtful things that are happening, you know, and some of it's intentional, and there's a lot that's there. But I truly believe that the solution is not going to come in dissecting what's wrong and what's not working right. The solution is going to come in developing the love and the forgiveness and the compassion within ourselves so that it spills around the world and impacts our life and impacts everyone in our life. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you today. You know, I hope it was meaningful for you. It's been meaningful for me. And I thought now we'll go ahead and do a meditation. So if you would, let's kind of prepare ourselves for that. And thank you so much for your kind attention this morning. And get my